Issue 84. We start out seeing the Chaotix headquarters in the Special Zone. Sonic jumps into the Omniviewer, and for some reason the Chaotix don't already know that Sonic and him have a history together that we've never been fully told about. Seriously, how'd they even become friends? After Sonic tells the Chaotix all about how Supersonic was banished to the Special Zone and could completely destroy it, there's some horrible writing as the Chaotix either act like they don't believe him in a fantasy sci-fi universe where they live in the Special Zone, or they even insist that they can handle it and they're busy. At least Sonic's line is cathartic here. I always thought you lot were a little crazy, but now I'm sure of it. Vector tells Omni to take them to New Tech City on planet Meridian, and Sonic is surprised to learn that there's not just this one weird region to the Special Zone, but it's a whole universe with suns, moons, planets, and everything. We're never going to see any other planet than Meridian, by the way. So now they're using the Archie Universe version of Zone. Make up your mind already! No wonder Sonic was confused. The Chaotix and Sonic warp to a place and get into a fight with some people to protect a Justice Brigade I don't care about. And Sonic naturally doesn't know which ones he should be hitting. He gets hit by one of the Discriminators, which sounds like an oddly self-aware title for a racist to give himself, and he talks like he doesn't think of himself as a good guy, which is psychologically implausible. You can't know you're evil. You can know you're selfish, but not evil. Sonic then calls him a geek as a random insult, like an elementary school bully. And after Mighty self-righteously talks about how the Chaotix are the heroes and they fight villains, which is a little too meta for my liking because no duh, they run for the police because Vector says the Chaotix have a misunderstanding with them and they need to clear their name. I don't think we're ever going to see them actually clear their name, by the way, speaking as someone who read the entire comic. The story ends with Sonic being grabbed for arrest and saying that he's past caring. Me too, Sonic, this wasn't a very fun story. In the next story, after Knuckles wastes our time recapping in his thoughts for the sake of the audience, he finds a village at night. He goes to a tavern for a room, saying that he hasn't had a decent night's sleep in days. Since the Mobian's smirking, I immediately guessed that he couldn't be trusted, and Knuckles should have assumed that too, having grown up all alone with no one to trust and all. Though from the Too Good to Be True tavern, I was already suspicious of a plot twist. Story ends with Knuckles seeing a sheep woman being kidnapped out of his window by a mob that has torches. In the next story, which hopefully I'll like this time, a civilian says thank goodness he's found Tails, and he talks all suspiciously while giving him a new pair of sneakers as a reward for all the times he's beaten Eggman. I wonder if these shoes are evil! Because God forbid they actually let Tails go fast to good effect and let him permanently be more competent. After it's revealed the shoes were made by Grimer, and we get a throw the dog a bone moment where Tails is complimented on his shoes and told that his shoes are cooler than Sonic's. Tails somehow realizes that the missile going after him isn't just a heat-seeking missile targeting his body that is much more common, but is homing into his shoes specifically. Sure, it's a good thing he figured that out, especially since he's normally portrayed as an idiot. After a brief panel where Grimer shows he's an idiot because he didn't put the missile to the maximum speed to begin with, Tails decides not to drop the sneakers into the sea to avoid endangering life on land because there's life in the ocean too. Tails then does the smart thing that I didn't expect of him by putting the shoes next to Grimer. I guess he was somehow planning on Grimer having a way to self-destruct the missile to save himself from a giant explosion he wouldn't be able to run from in time. Because if Grimer hadn't figured that out, Tails would have murdered him, and felt inexplicably guilty about it for the rest of his life. The story ends with an unnecessarily depressing panel as a civilian says that he knew Tails wasn't really trendy, with Tails not bothering to explain that Grimer had put a homing device for a missile in his shoes and the shoes got destroyed. Wait, did they? I guess Grimer could always make more missiles to go after his shoes, but couldn't he get Porker to remove the electronic device in them and wear them all the time anyways? He needs all the respect he can get! So once again I'm getting cynical and detached because the only logic here is meta logic and it's just a story where everybody acts like idiots. Tails isn't allowed to change his Sega design. And this comic doesn't want the continuity of having him have new shoes when it would inexplicably feel the need to remind us of how he got them over and over. That's the only reason he doesn't get to keep these shoes. In the final story by Lou Stringer, God, I think I hate everything about this issue so far. Sonic stops suddenly in front of people who say that he needs a new look, and he laughs at them. He's told that Amy's kidnapped, because of course any Mobian that isn't worshipping Sonic outright and is acting like a normal person is in league with Eggman. What a toxic lesson. He threatens to spin one of them into the ground, stops annoyingly when it's revealed that he was apparently bluffing, and he agrees to wear a very dumb-looking cloak to advertise their self-improvement services so Amy will remain unharmed. Why doesn't he just immediately run at the speed of sound to go all over the planet and eventually find Amy, which he would eventually do at that rate? I mean, he has super speed. Sonic reveals while attacking Sabadniks that the clothing is slowing him down, so I guess that's why he couldn't do that. But if he wasn't wearing the clothing to begin with, that would have never been a problem. And Amy suddenly reveals she escaped because they sucked at tying knots. And also they sucked at explaining things. This lets him get out of the clothing and save the day. Sadly, we don't outright see the villains get what they deserved. The first two stories were by Nigel Kitching, and I didn't like either of them. The first one just had me really frustrated that in a sci-fi fantasy world full of magical, unrealistic stuff happening, the Chaotix don't believe Sonic about his super form, and think that they could handle it if it did threaten their zone. How genre blind are these idiots? Didn't the Omniviewer tell them about the super form? Wouldn't he know? Also, we never learn how Sonic became friends with something like an Omniviewer to begin with. He's just some sort of really random part of the comic. And it ended off with some strangers I don't care about having a fight on a planet in the special zone. First off, having multiple planets that we'll get to see in the special zone just leads to a Planet of Hats situation rather than us getting to have a bunch of development concentrated on one planet, making the world building spread thin more and less impactful, so I guess it's a good thing that we'll only get to see one planet as far as I can remember. But more importantly, I don't care at all about these new nameless characters, much like the villains of the second story. Unlike with Archie, where they knew to generally keep a consistent Sonic-like Mobian design for the people, this comic has new characters with small eyes and stuff like that. Like realistic eyes. I'm not sure how to describe it. I guess they look too much like realistic animals and look like they came out of another franchise entirely, which gets me detached instead of invested. And even without that superficial nitpick, these villains are just generic bad guys that have no reason for anything they're doing. There's nothing to say about the second story as a result of that aside from all their ranting. Knuckles just goes to a tavern that's evil for some reason, and then a sheep woman gets kidnapped. The third story was by Lou Stringer, and it's about Tails being given some cool new shoes by a civilian probably threatened into it by Grimer considering his nervousness, probably from guilt, rather than smugness. Only for those shoes to have a homing device for missiles in them, rather than them having an outright bomb that blows up right away, because that'd be too dark and be competent of Grimer. The heroes are very lucky this comic gives them plot armor, because realistically written it can get pretty dark. So Tails throws the shoes at Grimer, and conveniently for Tails not being traumatized and feeling guilty, Grimer had a button to save himself, which I guess Tails assumed existed all along, or he wouldn't have done that, the softie. Imagine if Grimer had gotten killed from that. It would have saved Sonic a lot of trouble in the long run. What I really hate is the ending. Tails could have easily gotten the homing device from the shoes removed and worn them for the rest of the comic. He needs all the respect he can get from people, and he needs some sort of a reason to be confident. Plus, it would help make his design unique as Fleetway Tails. Sonic already has a sort of unique design because of how he's drawn in this comic compared to the rest of the franchise, where he looks meaner and much chubbier, with shorter spines. But instead they keep his regular shoes because meta logic. And the final story is about some Mobians who work for Eggman for no reason, threatening Sonic into wearing a slow-down clothing by threatening Amy, who eventually escaped on her own off-screen because they sucked at tying knots. I didn't like seeing him in those clothes.